Oh, fuck, I can hear that static noise again. Hold on. Can you hear that static noise? Can you hear that
Okay,
static noise?
let's do it. Yes, the first comment. Guess what the first comment is, Jacob?
What?
Static! Static!
Alright,
Alright, look.
I'll change the system up.
Alright, guys, look. Sorry if you're hearing weird static. Jacob has just bought himself one of these microphones that I told him to get because the sound is much better, and he's still trying to figure out how to use it. So by Sunday for the recap pod, Jacob is going to promise you guys that he will have his microphone all set up and you won't be listening to static anymore. Hey, Jacob, how are you?
Yeah, I hate technology, and I didn't spend enough time setting it up. Never works easily for me, but I had to spend every waking minute capping this round, of course, after having a bit of a shocker in my, return round 20. And we can't hide from the fact that the tips went pretty badly last week, and especially some of the games went south, and we recapped on Sunday. But, the thing is with punting that no matter how good you are, every punter will have a bad run, a bad round. And I guess the positive is that we've had such a good season that you can sustain a losing run because you look at our overall season stats, it's still healthy, even after a couple of bad weeks.
Oh, absolutely. And that's another one of the reasons why we always do preach money management. And if you guys do need a refresher on staking and money management and how much you should be putting on each of those bets, feel free to send our page, Tripod, a message, or our app, or in the Tripod app, or in our group. We've done multiple videos and also written a pretty extensive article about money management and how you should be staking as well. So before we get kicked off into the round, obviously, welcome to the Tripod. This will be the round 21 punting preview. Last week, as Jacob mentioned, it's a grim week, but we live and we learn, and we move on from that. Make sure you're in the Tripod app. That's where we release all our best bets. The second that they come out tomorrow, any additional best bets, obviously, apart from the ones that you'll hear in tonight's pod. And make sure you're in our group as well. That's where we have all the game threads, and you'll find a bit more banter in there rather than the app. But let's get kicked off. On Thursday night, Battle of Queensland, we've got the Cowboys plus 1.5 points hosting the Broncos. 38.5 points is the total. I kind of said last week that we thought that maybe this would be, that game where the Cowboys actually do fold for the season. They'd had put in, relatively tough games throughout the season, and we thought that now they're kind of out of the contention for the 8. Will they fold? They did fold, and I've just got an inkling that this might continue for the rest of the season, now that they're just out of the 8. Whereas the Broncos, this is a huge game for them. They are, sitting in, 9th place at the moment, I think, tied for points for 8th. So this is an absolutely must-win game for them. I would side with the Broncos here with the short line. I know that they still have no Matt Gillette, but they do get TPJ back, which is a big boost to the forward pack. So even with this, short line and the game being in Townsville, I still would side with the Broncos laying the 1.5 points. What do you think, Jacob?
I'd probably disagree. I just wanted to also say about round 21, we've capped the whole round. We've spoken already. We've got some best bets we'll share. I find this round quite tough, but I do always think it's always pretty tough when you've had a losing round and you were wrong on games, because when you get things wrong, then you've got to really go back to the drawing board. Okay, was I blatantly wrong, or was it just, circumstances transpired that way? So it's always hard to kind of question your beliefs.
Although in saying that, if I can interrupt you for just a second, I would say that we have no reason to go back to the drawing board necessarily after 2 losing rounds. I mean, we had, 7 winning weeks before that, and we've shown, over an extended period of time that we can, win at a 59, 60% clip. So I don't think we have to completely overhaul what we've been doing. Yeah, sure, we'd tweak some things, obviously, but certainly not, all of a sudden take every favourite, like some people say.
I'll give you an example of what I mean with the next game. But with this one, I think the Cows get up for this. I don't know if you knew They're moving to a new stadium, so this will be the last ever time they play against the Broncos at 1,300. We call it a derby game. I know there's a fair few kilometres between the two teams, but there has essentially been a Queensland derby, and I think you're talking about whether we question the motivation of the Cowboys because they had the gut-wrenching loss to the Sharks. They kind of mailed in the Tigers game, not much to play for, but I actually don't doubt that they'll be up for this one. They'll get a big crowd, and it's an important game anytime they play their big brother. But we know as well Brisbane will be up for it. And yeah, Brisbane got schooled by the Storm, but the Storm were absolutely dynamite last Friday as well. So I'm not going to write off Brisbane. Still all in front of them to push towards the finals. Although I don't like what I'm hearing out of Seabold. It seems like it's excuse after excuse from him rather than thinking where the team can go better. I think it's going to be a really good game and a tight game. I would actually lean to the Cowboys because I know I'm getting the underdog in that one. And I think that if you can catch a point and catch a handicap there, the Cowboys would be the side I'd lean with, as well as unders.
Fair enough. You know what is funny, Jacob? For the first half of the season, well, actually in the preseason pod, I remember I said I was high on the Cowboys this year. I thought that they would make the 8. How wrong I was, and it was you for the first 14 weeks of the season that was telling me, Alex, you're a fucking idiot. Don't take the Cowboys. And I wanted to take the Cowboys all the time, and you were the one talking me out of it. Now, for the last 2 weeks that you've been back, you've wanted to get on the Cowboys, and I've wanted to get on the other side. What has happened over in Europe?
I don't know. Deep down, and I still do hate the Cowboys. And before the season, I just looked at that team and I thought, this team looks slow, and they have been a step too slow. And question marks how good is a guy like Michael Morgan? We thought he was the best player in the comp 2 years ago. Even Taumalola didn't look good last week. But let's digress. We kind of got a split decision on that game. But we both agree unders might be the way the total goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's move on to the Warriors. Plus 6.5 points. Hosting Manly, 39.5 is the total. Wow. Well, these are two teams that are moving in completely opposite directions. The Warriors had, obviously, high hopes for finishing in the top 8, and that's all but extinguished now, whereas Manly are aiming up for a possible top 4 spot now, and they've been playing lights out. I mean, you couldn't get the public much higher on a team than Manly at the moment off a 24-point win against the Knights, and you could not get the public any lower on a team than the Warriors now off a couple of disappointing performances, and that might, 2 weeks ago might have been, we've mentioned it might have been the straw that broke the camel's back with the Warriors, and they did lay an egg last week against the Raiders. So this is one of those games where, as hard as it is, if I had to play a side, I would play the Warriors at home, catching 6.5 points. I think, that line's probably a touch too high. But it's also one of those ones where there's absolutely no hurry to bet on the Warriors if you like them, because this line, I can't see this going under 6. I can see this going above 8 before it goes under 6, that's for sure. I think everyone is going to be betting Manly, and no one's going to want any piece of the Warriors. But you'll notice up there we've got a couple of bets on the under. To me, that's completely weather related. It's forecast to rain on the Thursday, the Friday, and the Saturday, all day in Auckland. It's going to be, and that tells me, I know you can't look at the weather and be 100%, confident that it's going to rain. But if it's raining for basically 72 hours and the game is right in the middle of those 72 hours, I'm fairly confident it'll rain, and I'm fairly confident that this total will close lower than the current 39.5.
Yeah, I also agree with unders and what you're saying. And my point earlier about a game goes totally against you and you have to, put your hand up and say, I got that one wrong, such as when we took the Warriors against the Raiders last week. If that happens earlier in the season and you find a team that you think is underrated and then they just have a shocker, they have an absolute mare and the coach is ripping shreds off him at halftime, you lose and you take your medicine, but you say, well, that team's going to sail even further under the radar and I can bet on them next week. But late in the season, you can't just automatically say we're going to take the same teams, because it could be insanity, because some of these teams are giving up their will to live. And you look at the Warriors, you've got to question their heart at this point. A lot of close matches wore them out and they gave in last week. You've also got to say, missing Isaac Luke, Tavanga is not a natural hooker. Fusatua is a big out of that back line. Tohu Harris, an important back rower, and you're relying on leadership from guys like Adam Blair. I just don't know if I want to do it. Not to mention Nikorima's out as well. Harris Tavita will go into the halves there. But still, you've got a Manly side with Trebojevic at fullback who has not lost a game in 2019. It's ridiculous. So you don't really want to go against them. It's funny, back in the day, I'm talking 4 years ago, we did the pod and we had, 30, 50 people following us, we would have said, boys, fire on an early best bet. Manly at Pick'em to beat the Warriors next week. Because you could bet that. And people in our group and in our forum were getting on Manly +1.5, -1.5. We don't do those early best bets anymore because what happened was we'd give them out and within seconds it'd get taken off the board because there's too many people and the limits are lower on a look ahead. So we don't have the luxury of getting Manly at a really low number. As you say now, it's moved too far. I do think the Warriors, who've lost 6 in a row at home, have to at least come out with some fight. They have to focus on their defence. They have to put their body on the fucking line as Kearney told them to. And Manly is a very stout defensive team that doesn't blow you off the park instantly. So that's why we like the unders.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those ones where, like, even if the line got to 8, 8.5, you would not feel great about taking the Warriors because there's an equal chance that they fucking absolutely fold this one. But we're going with the unders plays for now. We're going to take under 19.5 points in the first half. That one's $1.83 on both Neds and Ladbrokes. And we'll also take under 40.5 points for the game. That's also on Neds and on Ladbrokes.
And just on that point that you're saying you can't make the line high enough. So like a week ago, this line was basically close to 0, close to a pick'em game. And now they've pushed it all the way beyond 6. And as you say, like not many punters out there on the street want to back the Warriors with their own hard-earned money. But if they've been winning on Manly, they'll keep backing Manly. So you almost can't make it high enough. But I'll warn people, like a lot of the obvious teams last week all won. All those, most of the top 4 sides, apart from Bunnies who were in like a 50-50 game, but all the other heavily favoured top sides, they all rolled. Now, what does the man on the street think? He thinks the Storm are going to be too good for Brisbane. He thinks the Roosters will destroy the Titans. The man on the street doesn't drive a Ferrari. The bookmakers do. So just be careful taking the obvious bet, which, in that game is obviously Manly. It just does not always work that way, especially in a competition like the NRL.
Oh, definitely. And to piggyback off your point, it's fair enough if some people want to throw in, a multi and say, I'm going to take every single favourite this round, right? That's like, obviously like not the best bet you can make, but I'll tell you when is the worst time to take that bet of a multi with all the favourites. It's around just after a round where all the favourites won, like you said, because, that next week everyone's going to be betting on the favourites again, and they're going to be even worse odds than they probably should be. Let's move on to the the late Friday game. We got the Panthers plus 4.5 points, hosting the Sharkies. 38.5 points is the total. It's another one where I think this line may keep creeping up towards 6, at which point I would definitely like the Panthers here. I'm just going back to my roots as a punter here. And what we've done for the last 5 years, it's taking the ugly duckling team that no one wants against a team that every public punter wants to bet on. Exactly what we have here. We've got the Panthers, who arguably had their worst game of the season. They scored 1 try against a hapless Bulldogs side in what we thought was a must-win. Everyone watched. Everyone was shocked. A lot of public punters probably lost on that game with all their favourites. It was pretty much the only strong favourite that lost over the weekend. On the flip side, you've got the Sharks, who I think that was their best game by far that they put in all season long. They were finally fully healthy, and they played like a top 2 team, honestly. I don't think anyone could have beaten them last week the way that the Sharkies played. But we say this all the time. You say this all the time, Jacob. No team is as shit as their worst performance, and no team is as good as their best performance. So I think, despite the Panthers, not having Maloney for this one and Luai, on the other hand, the Sharks are missing Moylan, so that's a bit of a bad break as well. But I just think that this line, if it creeps to 6, is going to be too high for a must-win spot for the Panthers.
It'll hit a point just like every line does where you have to take the underdog. But I kind of will present my disagreement case on this one. You're saying the Panthers' worst performance. Well, don't forget Magic Round against the Tigers, where it was a training run and that was, 30-0 after 20 minutes. And the Sharkies, while it was their best performance, I guess it wasn't their best result. They only won the game by 15. They could have won that game by 30. The score probably doesn't show how clinical they were. They looked ultra sharp, and you can call that a blip or an outlier that they played well, but there was reason behind it that they finally had their strongest, basically 17 on the park. Obviously, Wade Graham played out of his skin, and the team followed. And I think that it's not going to be completely repeatable, but I actually think the Sharkies, they don't have any room to kind of muck around here. I'd expect that they will be sharp again. I don't want to go against them. As you say, Moylan out, but Dugan is a good fullback. I know he cops a lot of grief, but he's had some better performances this season. He slots in, and you can slot in a winger in Fecky, who, again, if he can stay in the field of play and catch the ball and put it down, then, it won't cost them too many tries, hopefully. But the reason I don't want to take the Panthers is obviously Maloney out, and you say, well, they've won games without Maloney with Cleary, but they had Luai in the halves. I think that makes a big difference. Luai's not there, and Wade Egan as well. So it's big disruption to your halves. And what was their big problem against the Dogs? They couldn't score points. So if you couldn't get into double-digit points against the Dogs, then are you really going to be able to win this game? I know Kikau's back, and he can create points himself. But that's my hesitation on taking the Panthers, because I really think this Sharks team may be a buzzsaw that's waiting for them.
And you're right. I by no means think it's a slam dunk. And certainly this is one game where I'd love to take the Panthers, but the Sharks are one team that I kind of wouldn't like to see them come up against. We've said this before, that like when this Sharks team is fully healthy, I get that Moylan's out, but they're healthier than they have been all season. But they are one of the top 4 teams in the comp. So it's certainly not the greatest time to take the Panthers, I agree with you, against this Sharkies team that offer a bit of confidence. Next up, we got the Dragons laying 8.5 points, hosting the Titans. 41.5 is the total. Yeah, I don't know what to do with this game. We obviously got 2 teams that are completely out of finals contention. The Titans have been for quite some time. And we thought that the Dragons might just fold last week, being pushed just that little bit further out of the top 8 contention, but surprisingly enough, they actually put in a decent performance. I thought they would fold 10-0 down to the Eels at halftime. They didn't. They put in a big effort and came up short, and now I think maybe it's time. I mean, they're completely out of the 8 now. So what I do think in this game, it is a daytime Saturday game, nice sunny weather, 2 teams that are out of the 8, and generally, what I like to look for in terms of, totals is when you get 2 teams that don't care that much about the result, which I would argue, this is 2 of the most teams that you get that wouldn't care who wins. Generally, the game tends to trend towards an over. They're happy throwing it round a bit more. Mistakes don't matter as much. And defense tends to be a bit more lax in games where, 2 teams don't care. And it's the exact opposite if you get 2 teams that need the game like blood, like the 2 Sunday games this week with, top 4 teams playing. Generally, those tend to trend towards the unders. But Jairo back for the Titans is a big boost. And, yeah, it's just the only thing I could look for is overs at this point. The line seems high, but it seems, I don't know, it just doesn't make me want to definitely take the Titans at that line. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't disagree on the total. I'm trying to look at the side, seeing where's the edge there. James Graham playing his 400th first grade game. Now, do they use that to motivate themselves? But the thing is, it's not Cam Smith playing his 400th game for the Storm. It's James Graham playing his 400th game. And of all the clubs he played for, Dragons, you have to say, is probably the club he's had the least impact on. So I don't know if they feel like that drive to get out in droves and cheer for that. But they've got to find some reason to motivate themselves. I think the stat is they've only won 2 of their last 12, the Dragons, so they're reeling. But it's like a team that's got a lot of rep players, a lot of players that have played finals and high level. And this is a year where they're not in contention. So you wonder how they do kind of draw that motivation, or whether they just are happy for this season to end. Yep. They've got a few English players that are going to be looking forward to that Lions tour or whatever, World Cup Nines, and plenty of guys that just want this season to end. It's had a stench on it ever since the DeBell and stuff before the year, and there's whispers that Frizzell wants out. Now, for the Titans, bloody hell, they want the season to end too. But you get your best player back in Jai Arrow. You get Brimson back. I think that's a big in at fullback as well. And it's like, it just depends what you think was rock bottom for them. If you think that absolutely putrid display that they performed on the SCG on Sunday, getting lapped by the Roosters, was their lowest point, then maybe they'll show some heart. I said the same thing last week. It's a team that's still got first-grade players.
And the week before.
But do you want to keep betting on them until they finally put in a half-decent effort? You'd think as well with the coach who signed up is watching them closely. They've got something to prove. And just for their own pride. I mean, look at the memes we've been dropping on them on Zero Fucks Given. We're putting those out there hoping that might actually spur some life into them. But nothing has happened yet. But it could be this week. Once again, if the line gets high enough the only side you could play would be the Titans.
It's so funny. It's like you try and argue, any sort of reason why the Titans can show up for a game. Maybe this week Michael Gordon's just announced his retirement and he's injured. He's not playing. Do the boys lift, for him? It's like 3 weeks ago you're playing the ladder-leading Storm, you fold. Last week Broncos in-state rivalry, fold. Last week you're playing 2 weeks ago. Last week you're playing, arguably the best team in the comp, Roosters, fold. So it's like, fuck, we're running out of reasons to get the Titans motivated for this game. But once again, yeah, I think we're on the right side with overs there if we do decide to take it. Next game up, the Eels laying 4 points, hosting the Knights. 40.5 points is the total. Wowee, this is two teams going in completely opposite directions. The Eels they've been fairly solid all year long, but they have been playing some good football as of late. And especially at Bankwest, I think they've had 7 games there this season. They are 6-1, so they've made it a little bit of a fortress of their own. And the Knights, they're just they might be completely out of it. I know that we trusted the Knights, a few times over the past maybe 5 weeks or so. But I honestly think that they might just be done for the season. I just look at the body of work that they've had in the last 5 games. You lose to the Warriors at home. It's a pretty bad loss. Then you back that up in what should be a good spot for you. You lose to the Bulldogs at home. Then you get absolutely obliterated by the Roosters. I know we were on the Roosters in that game, but to be fair, the Knights did fold in that one. Then you go back home and lose to the Tigers. And then you get smashed by Manly. So the last month and a bit has been diabolical for the Knights. They're pretty much, are very much outsiders to make the 8 at this stage. And the Eels are sniffing a possible top 4 spot now. I just think that at home, Bankwest, which they've made a fortress, I would give them, at least 3 points maybe for this home field. And I would say, talent-wise, they're probably similar-ish. But just, on form and motivation, I have to think that the Eels are good enough to get the job done here at home.
And I'm with you, and you can make a case for the Knights, and one of those cases is they've actually got a pretty decent run home. Like off the top of my head, I think they still get the Titans and Dragons and a couple of home games, and I think they finished the season round 25 against Penrith. Like that could very much be a play-in game. So that's a positive to say that, as you say, they've lost 5 in a row, and yet they do control their own destiny, and they don't have to play any of the ruthless teams that are on a different level to them.
True.
So if they're good enough, they actually can get in. But are they good enough? Their best 2 players by far are Pearce and Ponga. And I wonder, are those guys getting worn down from carrying this team? And then they've both had big involvements in Origin. It's like a physical as well as a mental toll, because since Origin, there's a very steep drop-off by this team. And we know about the other turmoil and players that they've lost. And I spoke about on the recap, really big issues at 9 and 6 there. Connor Watson's not the answer at hooker. Mason Leno's just a shell of his former self there, not giving any extra foil to Pearce in the halves. Danny Levi's in the reserves. For me, he has to be in this team. And, if you've got issues at spine and you've only got 1 or 2 players that can create, the opposition keys in on those guys, and it makes it hard. And that's why I can't see the Knights getting enough points. Now, if you look at the Eels, they lost their best player in Fergo. I can't remember how many more weeks he's out. But they haven't missed him too much in the emergence of Sivo, and they signed Wonga Blake, and Michael Jennings is back from injury as well. So they've got some real strike in the outside backs. Moses, it looks like the game's slowing down for him. He is dominating these games. Reid Marnie gets better every week too. And I like their attitude and their energy, especially playing at Wankbest Stadium. We know that they do get up for those ones. So I'm with you. I'd lay that short number with the Eels.
Indeed, we've got 4 best bets as of now. We're taking the Eels minus 3.5 points for the game. That is $1.90 on Sportsbet. We're also going to take the Eels minus 1.5 points in the first half. That's $1.86 on Sportsbet. We're going to take the Eels minus 1.5 points in the second half. That's $1.83 on Unibet. And we're going to take for now the Eels team total over 21.5 points. That is $1.83 on Ladbrokes and on Neds. Next up, we got the Doggies plus 4.5 points hosting the Tigers. 36.5 points is the total. Good win by the Bulldogs last week. I don't think many people saw that one coming. I mean, we weren't on Penrith necessarily, but not many people picked the Bulldogs to upset there. But can they do it again here? I worry. They've only won, I guess, one back-to-back game this season, and it was when the Knights put up an absolute stink bomb against them in that back-to-back game. Where else, but I'll give the Bulldogs this. They're not like the Titans. They've won 3 of their last 5, and they've been playing pretty decent football. They've been defending pretty decently. I know that they've kind of been playing like the Dogs of old, where getting close, gritty wins. Like I said, they've won 3 of their last 5. Every single one of those games has gone well under the total because, as we know, if the Bulldogs are going to win a game, they're not fucking scoring 40 points on you. They're going to win at 16-14 and that kind of thing. Now, I guess let's look at the Tigers here. I know the Tigers haven't been on a great run. I looked through their last 12 games, and they've gone 5-7, which doesn't seem, that impressive. But then you look through the absolute fucking run of teams that they have had to play in those last few games. You've got Roosters there twice. You've got the Panthers. You've got the Storm. You've got Souths, Raiders there. Yes, the Cowboys in there. The Rabbits twice. Roosters again. Raiders, Knights, Cows. And they've gone 5-7 over that stretch, and they've been playing decent footy. I think that we have to side with the Tigers here. They're going to be the more hungry team. I think they're sitting in, 9th place at the moment now. So this is an absolute must-win game. 8th, there you go. So this is an absolute must-win game for them. And I just struggle to see, the Bulldogs putting very, very good back-to-back performances together, especially in this Tigers team. With their defense, I don't think the Bulldogs are going to score more than 12 points in this one.
Yeah, the Bulldogs are an honest team, and I think defense has never really been the Bulldogs' problem, but the issue they had with their attack was so bad, they could not mount any pressure or field position, and the other team was the one building pressure against them, and eventually they'd crack, but the attack's gotten a little bit better. I spoke before last week, Wateni Zalesniak's a legit fullback you're adding to that team with some other good young players. Give them credit. I know they've lost Adam Elliott. It's a slight loss in the back row there, but it's still kind of a strong forward pack. And the Doggies are an honest side that will, fight. And Dean Pay, does he need just a few more positive results to ensure that he's the coach next year? It seems like the players are playing for him, which is more than you can say for some other coaches.
True.
But you look at the Tigers, their attack is actually getting better. A team that we've always known as very grit and grind and defense orientated. You got to hand it to guys like Farah and Benji. We said that they'd wear down. But as you say, they made it look like they were when they lost 4 in a row, but they've won 2 in a row now. They find themselves in 8th. And they are the better team in this one, and it is a relatively short number. I feel kind of similar about this game as I did last week. I thought the Panthers would beat the Dogs. I feel like the Tigers will beat them, so take that for what it's worth. But it's a shorter line than what it was a week ago. So maybe this is the time where we take the better team that's in finals contention to get a win by, 4 or more.
Indeed, and we've got 3 best bets as of now. We're taking under 18.5 points in the first half. That is $1.80 on Ladbrokes and Neds. We're taking the Tigers minus 4 points flat. That's $1.90 on BetEasy. And we're taking the Bulldogs team total under 16.5 points. That one is $1.80. And just to explain that first half bet, if you'll notice, we've taken we're leaning towards a few unders on that Saturday. All those 3 games are going to be in and around the Sydney area. Yes, if you look at the weather report, it is meant to be relatively fine weather, but the winds are meant to be mental. They're meant to be up towards 35, 40 k's an hour. So, taking under 18.5 first half with 2 relatively shitty kickers, they're going to have to definitely score 4 tries there, and I think conversions will be a bit more difficult in the windy weather. Tony Roberts is asking, wouldn't race to 20 be a better bet? I'm assuming he's talking about the
Eels versus Knights?
Eels Knights game, and yes, we have thought about taking that one, and possibly even still will, but it's still out there, $1.90, $2 in various places. So that certainly is a bet that we will be looking at. And then now we get to the Sunday. This might be the best Sunday of football of the entire year. Of all top 4 teams together, starting off with the Raiders plus 1.5 points, hosting the Roosters. 9.5 points is the total. This should be an absolutely cracking game. Like we've said, myself and Jacob, if we had to bet a team right now to win the premiership, it would probably be the Roosters. They are the most talented team. Obviously had a lot of outs during Origin, that kind of stuff. But on their day, they are the best team in the comp. But this isn't the premiership. This is round 21, and we still don't have a fully healthy Roosters team. Still missing some forwards there. I know you get Jared Waerea-Hargreaves back, which is certainly a boost. But this Raiders team has arguably been playing, better than, I guess, definitely been playing top 4 footy and the most consistent footy throughout the entire season. They haven't had, stretches where they've lost, multiple games in a row. They've been absolutely fantastic this year, and it's just been one of those ones where, we've kind of found ourselves always going, or mostly going against this Raiders team, even though at the start of the season I said I'm so high on this Raiders team, they're going to be top 8 when no one else did. Canberra is a tough place to play. It's going to be pretty cold there. I know there's been some reports that people were saying it's going to be snowing. It's not meant to be snowing. I think I read the weather a bit more in depth. It's going to be about 8 degrees, which isn't that cold for Canberra this time of year, especially, I guess in the middle of the day, it probably is. But 8 degrees, it's certainly an advantage to Canberra. They're used to that sort of weather. And, that stadium down there, it's pretty strong home field. I would say, 2.5 at least, 3 points. So this line's telling us that the Roosters are 4.5 points better than the Raiders. Are they when they're both playing their best? Possibly, but on current form, I don't think you can argue that the Roosters are that much better than the Raiders. The Raiders are going to be hungry for this one. Big home field, massive game. Crowd will be out in force. I think they put out a very good performance. It's going to be a very close game, but as the Raiders are slight underdogs, I think it's one of those ones you just have to do.
Yeah, I think the Raiders will win this game. So we've already seen this game. We were at Magic Round on the Sunday, and it was Raiders-Roosters, so Sunday afternoon, and the Raiders were, from if memory serves, like an 8.5 point underdog, and we were on the Raiders, and after about 15, 20 minutes, they were down 18-0, and the Roosters were scoring long-range tries on them, and they basically blitzed them, and I think it was 24-6, and it was game over, but the Raiders made a late run and only lost the game by 6, and I think there was a forward pass call that denied them a try to make it 30-all. So even in that game, the Raiders showed they could fight and they could compete with the Roosters. And as you say, the Roosters are still not full strength. Boyd Cordner's still out. TKO's still out. And, of course, Jake Friend as well. And that makes a difference. Compared to that to the Raiders, they're as strong as they can possibly be. Even Ryan Sutton comes back into this team. And have we forgotten about Nick Kotrick? Like, this guy was one of the form outside backs in the comp, got picked for Origin. He's not off an injury. He's not rusty. He's off suspension, so he's going to be fit as a fiddle and hungry. He comes back into this team. And on top of that, BJ Leilua in the reserves. I don't even know if he's in their strongest 17 yet, but if they choose to move him in, they could swing Kotrick to the wing and Simonson would make way. But I trust them to make the right decision because Ricky's been pulling the right strings. Hodgson has it on a string. He leads the way in creativity for this team. And, if this was the grand final, it's a different story. I might be taking the Roosters, but I feel like, as you say, this game's just going to mean more to the Raiders. They're going to get a huge crowd. There's excitement and there's confidence in that team. Yeah, I believe they're going to win and they're a short underdog. So we've got to roll with the green machine on Sunday.
Yeah, and we're rolling with these plays now, especially because when you get a small underdog, if they switch into favourites, then all of these bets are basically gone. So we're getting them before that happens. We're taking the Raiders plus 1.5 points in the first half. That's $1.81 on Unibet. The Raiders plus 0.5 point in the second half. It's $1.89 on Sportsbet. The Raiders plus half a try. That is $1.80 on Bet365. The Roosters to score under 3.5 tries. That's $1.80 on Bet365. And we're making ourselves a mechanical Raiders plus 2 points. So we get our money back if they lose by 2. Ends up being $1.84. Both are on Sportsbet, putting 57% of our stake on the Raiders plus 2.5 points. That's $1.76 in the Pick Your Own Line section. And the remaining 43% of our stake on the Raiders plus 1.5. That's $1.96. Also in the Pick Your Own Line section. What should be another cracking game is the Rabbits plus 4.5 points hosting the Storm. 38.5 is the total. What a great day. What a great day of footy on Sunday. Make sure that you haven't made any plans to go to the farmers markets or anything around lunchtime because these are two games that you absolutely do not want to miss. Big news coming out. I guess Sam Burgess cleared for the Rabbits, which is certainly a boost. Didn't look like he would be because basically knocked Moylan out cold. It looked like he basically died in that one. So, but this one, you've got a similar situation that I always like betting on. I do like the Rabbits here, and I do think that this line has got a chance of getting to 6. It reminds me a lot of the Panthers-Sharkies game. You've got the Rabbits, who lost by a decent margin against the Sharks. And honestly, this is, like I said, I think it was the best game that the Sharks have played all season. I don't think anyone could have beaten them last week. So you've got the Rabbits coming off a loss where they were, looked pretty embarrassing, especially the final score. And you've got the Storm that just keep rolling, absolutely demolished the Broncos 40-4. Everyone saw that. And I think everyone just thinks that the Storm are just going to roll this one. But let's just have a closer look here. The Storm are 3 games clear at the top of the table. Don't think anyone's going to catch them on points differential either. They are way ahead. So, yes, will the Storm be up for this game? Probably, but there's certainly a chance that they're not as motivated as the Rabbits. I think that's almost, I would say that's almost an 100% chance that the Rabbits are more motivated for this one. They're fighting for a top 4 spot and to stay in the top 2 spot and to stay in the top 4. They're at home here. I think that's got to be, they are not at home. Jacob reminded me of this, neutral venue at the Central Coast. But you've got a Rabbits team that is off a loss, should be highly motivated for this one. You've got the Storm, public will be all over them, no doubt, off a big win. But yeah, I do question the Storm's motivation over the last 5 weeks of the season when they have a 3-game lead and pretty much have that number 1 seed locked up already. Jacob, what do you think?
I'm still just scared to go against the Storm, and I feel like when they field their best 17, they still want to build combinations and build momentum, and then if they see a game that they don't feel they really need to win, that's a game where you rest a Smith and a Munster, and they've got the luxury of choosing when that'll be. I look at this game as them being 3 wins above a team that's nipping at their heels, and you put that to bed. If you win that, then there's no way that team can leapfrog you. Then you just you don't allow yourself as much breathing room, I suppose, in the final weeks to play around with resting guys. But as you say, they're probably too far ahead now anyway that they have to worry about that. But they're still pretty ruthless. Whereas the Bunnies, I don't know, look at their outside backs. They just don't scare me. Like Jimmy the Jet doesn't seem the same player he was a couple of years ago. They really miss Johnston at fullback. Like Dwayne, he's solid, but it doesn't scare you either. Even Braden Burns, since he's come back from injury, it isn't as electric. And Gagai is a better rep player than a NRL player. I know he scored a pretty good try last week, but you got to respect the Bunnies. Take nothing away from it, as you said. Their loss against Cronulla. If anything, I was actually impressed by the fact that Cronulla blitzed them and they didn't give up, and they actually fought back into the game on a couple of occasions there. So, they'll show up, but I just think the Storm are the better team. As you say, on a neutral venue, can the Storm win this game by a converted try or more? I think they really could, even though they've lost Christian Welsh. They just have such depth that they can bring in good players. Their feeder team is the Sunny Coast Falcons, who are leading the QRL, leading the Queensland Cup
of course they
as
are.
Well. So it's like that, and they bring a guy like Joe Stimson straight in to their team, slots in, and you've seen what they've done year after year. Guys like Tohu Harris, Kevin Proctor, they leave the Storm, and those guys never end up being as good as they looked in a Storm jersey. So the Storm gets the best out of their players, and that's why I'm probably too scared to go against them on Sunday with the current line.
Indeed. So we don't have any bets on the Storm game for now. Just looking at a few.
So I had one more reason as well, and I don't know if this is a big reason, but I really recall these two teams played each other last year right around the same round. It was around, say, round 21, 22, and it was first, second. It was a huge game, and it was the Rabbitohs that beat the Storm. And here we've got first versus a team that's equal second on points, and I wonder if the Storm also remembers that the Rabbitohs pulled their pants down last year. Just wonder as well if that factors into Storm motivation.
Yeah, definitely. And even to add to your point, I'm seeing a comment flow through from Joseph saying, is Storm unmotivated? 3 losses all year by a total of 4 points. And yes, no, I'm not saying by any means that they will not be motivated for this game. All I'm saying, and especially not the entire season, but I do think this is slightly different. They have proven themselves to be the best team in the comp, pretty much by far during the regular season. I'm just saying that 3 games clear with 5 games to go, there's a chance that they're not
no doubt about it. That who needs to win this game more? Rabbitohs need it more than the Storm.
Right.
And if Manly beats the Warriors on Friday night, then they're going to be licking their lips because they could see, they know that a couple of teams above them might not win on Sunday, especially when you got Raiders, Roosters.
Two of
and
them
if
have
the Storm beats the Bunnies as well, then that really opens the door for Manly. So pressure on, and that's what's going to make it such a cracking day of footy.
Indeed. Baden asking, are we betting on the Panthers game? We haven't got any best bets on the Panthers game as of yet. We will decide if the line moves or anything like that, if we're going to add any more. If we do add any, they'll be in the Tripod app at around lunchtime tomorrow. All these bets that we gave out on the pod will be there, and any additional best bets we give out as well. So thanks for tuning in, guys. This is a bounce back round once again. The pressure's off, though. We've lost 2 in a row. That hasn't happened for, like I said, over a year and a half now. So we're not used to this feeling, but we certainly don't like it either. So hopefully we'll get back on track this round, and we're still well and truly up for the entire season as a whole. So Jacob, anything you wanted to add before we leave them for round 21?
I think there's been plenty of info in this pod already, so let's get back on winning track.
Indeed, that'll do it, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you after the Rabbits Storm game on Sunday for a recap of what was hopefully another winning round. See you then.